Check one, two, three. Hey everybody, it's Michael Helms, also known as Michael the Sound Guy, and this is the Location Sound Podcast. You know, each episode we talk with location sound mixers, boom ops, and other industry pros about the various aspects of recording sound on location, whether it's for feature and independent films, TV commercials, interviews, any time where dialogue from actors is recorded. I started my career in the recording studios in New York City with some of the big artists back in the day, and later on projects for networks like HBO, Sci-Fi Channel, and the Cartoon Network. As time went by, I got out of the studio and began working in production sound. Whether you're a seasoned veteran or just starting out, thanks for joining us. Before we get started, I wanted to mention our sponsor for this episode, FloridaSoundman.com. One of our past guests, Joe Giannotti, production sound mixer, has created the Quiet Please Filming in Progress sign. You've probably seen it. It's a 24-inch by 36-inch collapsible sign, and now he has the Lav Organizer, and it holds up to 5 lavalier microphones in a compact pouch. So visit the product page at FloridaSoundman.com to check out the products, and use promo code LSP for a 10% discount. That's FloridaSoundman.com. Okay, my guest today is a production sound mixer and boom op based out of the greater Los Angeles area. Please welcome Kurtis Ewing.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
I guess during this COVID time, what's been your situation?
Interesting times, to be sure. I've been able to stay a little bit busy mixing and editing descriptive audio, which is basically voiceover over television or film programs so the blind can hear the show. It started like right when the shutdown happened, and I've been able to stay busy with that for these 5 months. Not super busy, but busy enough.
Okay. And how'd you get involved with that?
Oddly enough, I was on Production Hub or one of those sites like that, and I read something that tailored to what I wanted to focus on, which was learning a little bit more post, learning a little bit more about our craft and how they intercept. And so I could be better at both, really, but be better at production sound mixing. And so when I read it, was like, you know, mixing, editing, Pro Tools, the things that I know a little bit about. I wrote the guys when they were wanting someone, and it just fit. My experience from Pro Tools and my experience from mixing live sound, it just fit.
You just edit it, or are you recording it, or what?
No tracking for me. Everything will come either in two forms. It'll be the voiceover just laid, and I will need to edit it and mix it, or it'll be previously edited and then I mix it. So someone captures it, and during this time, my guess is they're recording it themselves, the voiceover artist. So they just have a time code, they have a script, and they speak the lines according to the script.
Okay. Yeah, I think I saw something. I don't know if you've ever listened to the 20,000 Hertz podcast. Mm-hmm. And I want to say they had an episode or something on that, and they just talk about the people. So they're describing what they're seeing on screen, and they also had to be real careful because they didn't want to, steer it a certain way. They had to be like this pure description of what you're actually seeing, so the person that's listening to this descriptive audio can kind of decide what they're seeing or hearing in their mind. So
it's really fun. It's really challenging. If you can picture, they've gone to great lengths to maximize sound when they, finish a film or a TV show. So a lot of times there's some huge dynamic swings in range. And so the voiceover needs to sit in a way that it's pleasant, but also, hits a standard. And so it's challenging, especially on like an action film or something like that. Like they want that described, they want to hear what's going on. So ducking it without it sounding like ducking. So really, it's just really gentle fades. It's fun.
Okay. The movie is playing, so there's a description, but then it ducks for the actual dialogue.
Well, if there's dialogue happening, then no, their description will never fall over dialogue. It'll only fall over or in between dialogue. Dialogue wins every time. So it will just be over music, over gaps in dialogue. They'll fit a description in, so never over dialogue. But yeah, they play hand in hand. Check it out. It's if you're on Amazon or on one of those platforms, look for AD, and it's there, and just open it up as if you wanted to get subtitles.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And they're neutral, right? They're not like getting excited and then just describing it. Yeah.
None of them are really acting, if you will. No. They may, if something's funny, there could be a little bit of a and she fell, like depending on the show. If it fits, they'll describe it in that way. But if it's like I did Chucky's Revenge or one of those, and there were some times when the artist would be like, and it oozes down or something like that, like just I suppose to entice them and draw them in a little bit, but not much.
But other than that, just kind of sheltering in place and living life?
I mix front of house, so there's a church that I mix at here in Los Angeles, so they still kept their broadcast up. I stayed busy on Sundays doing that too. So like I've been busy, I suppose, just not doing what we normally do.
Let's talk a little bit about, some of the gear you like to use. You do some production sound mixing. So what's your gear setup like? So what do you have in your audio bag and your favorite mixers and mics and timecode and all the good stuff?
I use an older petrol bag. It's a perfect fit for what I do. I use the 633. I kind of mix it up with lavs according to who we're miking. But in my kit, I have MPAU ones. I have 6060, 4061s, 4071, COS-11. Depends on the talent, depends on the time, how much time we have, things like that. I use a Lectrosonic SRB. I have 2 LR receivers, A and B for Los Angeles. It's good. I use SMQVs and HMA. For slate, I use a Denecke TS-C, and for timecode, I use an SB-4. I have R1As for Comtex, and I use Sennheiser for camera hops. I use the eSmart batteries now. I just switched about 2 weeks ago. I'm super happy about that. So I have Remote Audio HiQ lithium batteries, or lithium ion. For boom, I use a MiniCMIT or the CMC641, and I also obviously take a 416 in case it's rainy or something. That's about it for a basic kit, I guess.
All right, cool. Well, I was looking at your IMDb, so let's take it back like 20-something years, and you worked on the 1998 MTV Video Music Awards. Tell us a little bit about it, what you remember in that experience.
I remember that one really well. The Beastie Boys performed. That sticks out to me. It was fun. Doing a live show, award shows like that are always fun and challenging. Back then, you could do, when we were in 695, you could do camera utility or audio utility. So it was a unique time. So sometimes I would do camera utility and sometimes I would do sound. Yeah, it was a good show. I remember that show distinctly just for the people that I saw. Lenny Kravitz, like just the performers on stage. Beastie Boys stick out to me. They did Intergalactic maybe. I just remember them performing it. It was fun.
So you're primarily were doing sound utility and...
I on that show, I was a camera utility, but it's easier to just put sound utility for the way things are documented, if you will. But I was in 695. Some award shows I did sound, some I did utility. I remember the NCLR Bravo Awards, I did sound. My job was to make sure that the podium mic was out when Cheech Moran walked out. So if it's live, so if I didn't put the mic out, no one would hear him. That was pretty stressful.
I was talking to my daughter about, I was looking at some other projects you worked on, and Hannah Montana, the TV series. So what do you remember about that show?
That was a good time. Pete Damsky and Jeff Johnson, I think, were the mixers. I think I was the utility on that, which entails pushing the Fisher boom. It was a good time. Pete Damsky's a very good mixer. Had a lot of fun when I had an opportunity to work with him.
Okay. Now it was primarily just the Fisher boom, or were you wiring people up as well?
When you do, most of the time, well, except for the show that I'm presently on, most of the time you don't use wires on a sitcom unless we're outside or something like that's happening. But on the show that I currently work on, Just Roll With It, everyone's wired. So it's kind of like an odd animal, that one.
So yeah, let's talk about Just Roll With It. Now that's actually filmed before a live audience.
It was. I hope it comes back to that. Just Roll With It's a great show. I would say that the gentlemen that I work with on that show have helped me more than anyone to just find a place in doing location sound and also doing like studio work on a Fisher boom and sitcoms and stuff. But that show's unique. We did a live show and there were 18 on our audio crew. I think it was massive. And so we've done some that would be my favorite. If you would ask me what my favorite experience was, it was that live show. That was very rewarding. I was a utility. We had 4 Fisher booms. It was something else. because it's, I don't know if you've seen the show, but it's the audience decides what happens to the cast. So you can rehearse all you want, but you don't know exactly how it's going to go. So it takes a ton of preparation. And Ryan Canestro is the mixer on that show, and he does a really good job of, preparing and making sure everything goes well. That whole crew is amazing, with Johnny Kubelka, Troy Wilcox, Peter Beer. I feel like I'm getting an award. Ryan Carmen and Chris Claypool. And everybody on that crew is so diverse in their knowledge base and what they do. Some of them are doing production sound, some of them are doing E&G, some of them are doing episodic, but everybody kind of has a skill set, and some are doing obviously sitcoms because the show is a sitcom. But everybody brings their tools to the show, and it helps. Like everybody getting wired. If you've been to a sitcom and seen the Fisher Boom, so 2 Fisher Booms, and then also the whole cast wired, it's intense, and it's fun. It's rewarding. Each week is rewarding.
Well, for some of our guests that maybe aren't familiar with the Fisher Boom, kind of give us a quick overview of that.
Sure. So a Fisher Boom, a perambulator, is a mechanism that you can stand or sit on. Usually we sit, and they extend 23, 26, or 29. And they're metal. The 29 is carbon end on the pole, but the base is metal. And so you crank it out and extend it and crank it in to bring it back. And then with your hand, you can articulate the microphone. So it helps you be in deep spaces without having to hold a pole forever, basically. And so my dad was a Fisher Boom operator. I consider myself loosely a Fisher Boom operator. I obviously push boom and utility. Mostly just sitcoms, really, that those get used on these days.
Okay. Now, what kind of training do you need to use that, and how much time do you spend before you're actually doing it on a live show?
I guess it would be all based on demand, really, because if they needed someone, then you're going to do it. But in terms of how long it takes, I suppose if you're a utility on a season of a show and had a boom operator that loved to teach, like the way that Johnny Kubelka does, and honestly Troy Wilcox too, on that show, they're the types that will walk you through it, let you do a rehearsal on a scene. That's what you need to really, in my opinion, to do it. So be a utility at least one season on a show and kind of get the geography of where everybody is on a set, how everything plays with the lights and the Fisher and where it sits. Probably a season.
Now, when you're wiring these people up, when you're wiring these actors up, so what mics were you using, and what wireless packs, all that?
Sure. Usually I'm on the boom, so I don't wire talent, but I know what they're using. I think he has 2 venue systems and mostly SMQVs and SMVs.
And do you know what labs they're using?
COS-11s mostly. It's fast. Like that's COS-11s pretty much, in my opinion, the fastest mic to mic someone with.
Okay. Now, when you're working on your other projects and you're wiring talent, what are your go-to expendables when you're wiring talent?
Honestly, it's a mixture, and I've learned so much from watching and listening to your podcast specifically, just of what other people have done. And I wrote a note for myself to challenge people, like, experiment, man. Like, don't trust that just one thing works. Like, try stuff, because you never know when that odd timing comes up and you're going to need to do something. So for me, I use them all, from Viviana to Bumble to LMC. Like, I'll use them all, and my football box is full of everything.
All right. Now, you also were working on a show called Girlfriends. Tell us about that one.
Girlfriends was a good show. It ran for a long time. I was a boom utility on that show as well. I think that show went on for 7 years. I think I did it for 3. So in terms of longest on a show, it was that and probably MADtv that I was on the longest.
So just scripted format.
Yeah, it was a sitcom. It's just 4 girls and their life experiences. A cool thing about that is Kenya Barris, the gentleman who created Blackish, he was a writer on the show, and he and I became friends from that experience, from doing Girlfriends. So it's pretty cool for him to kind of perpetually work through everything and end up where he is now. Is pretty cool.
Well, how did you get started in production sound?
My dad. My dad was a Fisher Boom op as long as I can remember. Different Strokes, I think, was like my earliest memory of him doing boom. So I was around the set a lot growing up, and it just took its course. I don't think I planned it. It's just one of those things where it clicked one day. I could do it. I need to listen to what my dad's saying. Obviously, I just etiquette, things like that. I realized that I could do it, and within a year, I was in the union and working on shows. 97, I think I got in the union. It's a blast. I got out of it a little bit recently and did sales. And it's funny, as I'm doing sales for like post-production facilities and things like that, I just started to get this itch. Like I miss it. I picked an amazing time to come back, obviously, because of COVID. But I came back probably about a year ago, and it's been exactly what I thought it would be. Like, I'm so happy to be back and so happy to have the camaraderie and the friendships that build so quickly on a set. Like, it's an amazing life. We're very lucky to be able to do it, in my opinion.
So you were doing some work like designing and installing new studios and upgrades, things like that?
Yeah, integration. In short form, integration. A lot of the Los Angeles post houses I had relationships with and helped them.
Is there anything that you're doing, in that aspect of the business and then being back on set? Is there anything that you can cross over and helps you do your job in any way, thought processes or anything like that?
The relationships, I'm very lucky that those key accounts that I had, they're my friends and they're some amazing people, just really, really talented people. And so I'm able, like I did a feature in December, and there were some things I had questions about because it was on a boat and it was challenging. And so I was able to call a friend who's a dialogue editor on a show. He won the Emmy last year. And I was able to call him and say, I need to figure this out better to capture this. And I sent him my tracks from the first day, and he gave me pointers, and it was just, I'm really lucky to be able to reach out to someone like him.
Yeah, that's great. I think being able to talk to somebody who's in post and say, what else can I do for you? Versus like, well, this is it. This is what we got.
I was really amazed to hear, like, when I call them, they mentioned how few mixers reach out to them. And for me, it's like, yo, you have the key. Like, you can tell me everything I need to know to give this to you on a palette. And so for me, I asked questions immediately once I started working more and had the right questions to ask. Yeah, man, I started asking questions immediately just about how they prefer their tracks to come, the problems that they have to fix, what we can focus on, how we can make it better for them, how to get the most out of bad situations. And so, once I got the answers I needed on that specific job, I utilized them. And sure enough, the files I turned in, they were good. So it was helpful.
What are some common problems that dialogue editors have to fix that we record on set?
Signal to noise. Not just that could be bad, but that's the one thing that they can't deal with because of just the noise that happens when they need to get it to, hitting a standard of loud, quote unquote, for the dialogue. It gets messy. It gets nasty if we don't have it right. And so us being loud is important. And that was the main thing that most of them drove home, signal to noise, get that right. Obviously, close rustle and, wind, just stuff that's going to happen. And as we progress through our career, we find ways to beat it and be better at it. But signal to noise is something that stands out the most in my conversations.
Yeah, I noticed a lot of times, people are trying to be cautious, and they record too quiet, and then you got to crank that stuff up. So
it's going to be hard to clip in a good recorder, like a good mic, good recorder. Like if our signal chain is good, it's going to be hard to clip. And I would err on the side of hot or split it like what I do. Like I have left and right, and my right's 10 down, so I can't clip that side.
Okay. Now, do you remember what the first big project you worked on doing sound?
I mean, probably MADtv, honestly. Like that was a big deal to land like my first run of a show, quote unquote, where the mixer chose to bring me, keep me. Yeah, MADtv was an amazing experience. And it also started me off on doing music and all kinds of other crazy stuff.
Well, as a boom op, how do you like to start your day when you first walk on set? Say a day you've already kind of established things, your daily routine.
Oh, I have a list, and so mainly it would be read battery, read the sides, see what's happening that day, get the mixer some coffee, just normal stuff. And on a sitcom, it would be position the Fisher booms in the right spot, put mics on if we were down for a little bit of time, check the audience mics, check whatever we're doing that day to make sure that I'm prepared to do my job.
Now, when things start rolling as a boom op, kind of tell the listeners, how do you communicate with the mixer? You're letting them know what's happening on set if they're not right there. What's your lingo in communication?
Sure, everything. If there's something that I think he could, if you picture a mixer, so we're on the floor and the mixer's in the booth. So for him, he could be hundreds of feet away. So he can't come out there quickly and listen for himself. So whenever the director's on set or someone's on set, if there's something that needs to be communicated, it's as fast as possible because he can't see what's going on typically. So for me, I want to dialogue any lighting changes, any actor changes. Sometimes it's a boom change on a sitcom. There's 2 booms, so it might go from boom 1 to boom 2, and probably the same thing if you were doing episodic. Like you're the eyes, he can't see, and you want him to feel as plugged in and as connected as possible.
Now, I also see that you are certified in Dante. So tell us a little bit about that experience for you, and then who would you recommend getting into that certification? Because not everybody needs it.
Let's see. So I have two levels. Level 3 was a little daunting, and time stopped me from doing it. But honestly, I think that's where we're headed. I think that building a rig and being able to just extend something with the CAT cable and use Dante is where we're headed. Obviously, it's used now already. Like, we use it on our show, and John Allicher is building a rig right now here in town, just off the top of my head. Being able to use Dante and maybe, use other microphones like Shure and use Axient Digital and just have everything on the network is where we're headed. And who would use it? Anybody who needs more mics. Like if you're using a lot of mics in maybe even multiple locations, that's who needs it. So in live sound, we use it a lot. In like music, live sound.
Okay. Now, you mentioned your father. Did you have any other mentors that kind of helped you get started?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, just recently during like this time, Juan Cisnero, Chris Howland, Chuck Bush, Steve Thibault, and Brian Canestro, like those mixers as a group have helped me immensely.
And what are some of the things that you feel like that, what was that help? Was it just encouragement? Was it opportunities?
For me, I think just to absorb it all and then take it back to our practical application. So I want to grow from it. I want to get better. And so specifically, Juan Cisnero has 10 commandments regarding production, and it's priceless. Another thing that he says is personality, politics, and craft, PPC, like that's us. So those 3 things are really important on a set to produce on your job well and build lasting relationships. Like it's you're always auditioning for your next job, and if we look at it that way, it serves us well.
Yeah, that is something that we hear over and over again on the podcast. People talking about just having those relationships and developing that and working well with each other. And we've all been on sets where that doesn't happen.
No, and I would say early on, my dad drove home one thing, like all you have is your name. And I did the best I could. I'm sure there's times where I dropped the ball and didn't do well. I would say that now I'm hyper focused about it to make sure that I want to do the best I can, that as many as possible will have something good to say about me. And so I'm focused on, being a good human, like being quick to listen and slow to speak, give everything its appropriate time, make life better for people. Like I would say that's my focus. Like if I'm on a job and I'm a utility, a boom operator, a mixer, when you're on a job like that, doing something, everybody has someone above them. And so for me, I want to do my job and make their job easier somehow. And if that's building trust, so they trust you, then that's fine. Or if it's a mixer and you just want them not to think about things and you have it taken care of, I want them to feel that way. Like whatever I can do to make their job easier, because it's not about me. Like I'm there to do a job, and the better I can do my job, the more apt I am to get more work. And so that's just the way that I look at it.
All right. Well, tell us your worst on-set experience.
So I'd say my worst on-set experience was on a sitcom, and the other utility would say things to me like, you're almost gone, just derogatory things like implying I was going to not be there the next season, and just derogatory things. That by far was the worst on-set experience, and it lasted a season. And the next season I was there and that person was not.
That's so strange. It's just the whole time like, you're almost out of here,
Yeah, it was strange because that person would be, some highs and some lows. And I'm not sensitive, but I care a lot. Like I thrive on relationship. And so when it's not there, especially if I didn't do anything, it's tough. I've learned to be stronger and also to be secure. And if I'm doing a good job, don't worry about it. Just keep your head down and just keep working, and it will work itself out. And that proved itself.
What was your biggest technical challenge you ever had on set?
Learning. Like honestly, just for me, I like to have things under control. Like I like to not know everything. We're never going to know everything, but to really have a grasp on everything. So the grind of knowing all of my tools, like I'm constantly playing with stuff at home, different mics, different setups, doing things. My challenge is being the best I can be. And so on set, I can't think of one specific time. It's probably been too many years, like of doing so many random things, but just the grind of learning to be better. And it's a pleasant one, even though it doesn't sound like it. Like it's a good grind. Like I want to be the best that I can be, and whatever that it takes, I'll do it.
Okay. Now, if you could go back to the beginning of your career and start all over, would you do anything differently?
In a nutshell, I think what I would do different is really, really appreciate the position that we get put in. And so for me, it was maybe a little bit of nepotism, but it is what it is. Some people like your parents and some people don't. So it didn't always work for me, but appreciate the position we're in. I would have valued each instance more and tried to spiderweb the relationships a little bit better to be longstanding and valued that time. Like right now, I value every relationship I have, every connection that I make, every show that I'm on, like everything we do, I value them all. And then let it take its course. Like let the relationship blossom and be what it's going to be. Don't force it. But I would definitely appreciate the times when you're put in a situation of something valuable, like a show or maybe even shadowing, but just those things, value them when someone extends a kindness.
All right, cool. You know what? I was going to ask you, tell me a little bit about your music side.
When I worked on MADtv, Aries Spears was an actor and he wanted to rap. And so I don't know how it came about for me to get equipment for him, to rap, but it did. And so I bought an MPC and a Triton, which were the typical things people used. And it turns out that I was good at it. I produced The Game. I produced Razkaz, a bunch of rappers. I did it for many years until it just wasn't fun anymore. I had a studio on Ventura Boulevard right behind the CBS Radford. It was a huge part of my life for like 10 years, but it started from working on a sitcom, buying gear, and, I learned how to mix. I learned how to, as much as I could. Most of the time it was just turning in files. When you finish a song, you just turn in the stems usually, and they'll mix them. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Well, if you could offer advice to people maybe getting started in production sound, what kind of advice would you give?
I would say ask questions. I think that most sound professionals, that you see working will give you time and give you the opportunity to speak with them. Don't be shy. Like if you have a real question and a real desire to learn, ask questions. I think that most people enjoy talking about their craft and what they do. And I think that there's opportunities there for you to honestly talk to whomever you want and just pursue that knowledge and the relationship. I'm so blessed to have met the people that I have and to have the people in, I guess, my corner walking alongside me during this path that I'll do anything for them. Like if someone calls and they need something done at their house, I would do it. You know what I mean? Like I value the relationships to that extent. And so if you're pouring into it, it's gonna benefit you someday. So for me, it's value the relationships, enjoy the craft, enjoy the research that you put into to gear and learning, and have fun. Like it is whatever we make it, And so for me, I want to make each day as good as it can be for me and the people around me, and enjoy the process.
That's good. Well, if people wanted to reach out and find out more information about you and what you do, what would be a good way to do that?
They could email xlemusic@gmail.com or Instagram sound_XL.
All right. Well, I want to say thanks to Kurtis Ewing for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
And I'd like to say thanks to everyone for listening. If you have questions or would like us to discuss a particular topic, email us at locationsoundpodcast@gmail.com. Please subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review. We're available on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and on your favorite podcast app. Until next time, remember, sound is half the picture.